All right, so in the last lesson we talked about how to size and position UI views by directly setting the frame values. And recall that a frame is a rectangle and consists of values x, y, width, and height. And today we're going to take a different approach by setting the frames through AutoLayout. So we are not going to set these frame values directly anymore, but instead we are defining AutoLayout constraints, and then AutoLayout will calculate and set these values for us. Let's first get a high-level overview of what AutoLayout is. So the very first and most important thing is that we don't set frame values directly anymore. As I already mentioned, in fact, when we are using AutoLayout and we are trying to manipulate frames directly, it won't have any effect. Because AutoLayout is always more powerful than our manual manipulations, so AutoLayout will override the changes that we are doing. So we're not manipulating the frame values directly anymore. Instead, we're going to specify a set of rules, and these rules are actually called constraints. And based on these constraints, AutoLayout will calculate the actual frame values and set these frame values at runtime. So that way we can make sure, for example, that our user interface scales well across different device sizes. In fact, the whole AutoLayout system has been introduced in order to deal with the new sizes that have been introduced with the new iPhones. So only because we have multiple screen sizes across different iPhone devices by now, Apple decided to implement the AutoLayout system. And in general, what's really nice about AutoLayout is that it gives us a simple way to specify the size and positioning of UI views relative to each other. So we can define relationships between views, and that's actually the whole power behind it, which enables us to build user interfaces that scale well across different devices. And AutoLayout generally always requires us to specify enough constraints so it can calculate the frame for each view. So we need to give it enough information so that it can calculate the x, the y, the width, and the height for each view that we're seeing on the screen that we're using AutoLayout for. If we don't provide enough information, then we can't really know what is going to happen at runtime. And maybe if you've used AutoLayout in Interface Builder already, sometimes you'd see these red lines appearing, right? These red lines actually always indicate that either we didn't provide enough information for AutoLayout to calculate these four values, or we provided conflicting information so that AutoLayout doesn't know which information to choose and what the actual values should be. So these red lines are not a reason to panic. On the contrary, they're actually very reasonable information for us because AutoLayout is just trying to tell us that either we didn't give it enough information or we provided conflicting information. All right, but how do we define constraints? Well, the answer to that is in terms of AutoLayout attributes. And these AutoLayout attributes are based on UI views. So we have 4 attributes when it comes to the edges of a UI view. So we've got the top edge, that's always the one on the top logically. Then we've got the trailing edge. Note that this is the edge on the right side. Then we've got the bottom edge on the bottom, and the leading edge, and that's the left on the edge on the left side. Then we also have the width and the height, and then we also have the center attribute. And all these attributes allow us to specify relationships. So we can say that the top edge of one view should be related to the bottom edge of another view in some sense. So for example, with a distance of 20 points. Or we can say that one view should be exactly as wide as another view, or it should be half as high, for example, as another view, or that its center on the x-axis should be positioned on the same center as another view, but maybe even with a distance of 20 points on top or beneath. So we've got these 7 attributes, and actually a couple of more, but these 7 are the only relevant ones at the moment to specify the relationships between views.